Senate Commerce Committee. We are going to go ahead and get started so that we can allow as much time as possible for our hearing today, because I think we're going to find it very interesting and have lots of questions for our conferees today. We will, since we do have so many people wanting to testify, we are going to limit testimony to 5 minutes, but then we'll have I want a lot of time for the committee to be able to ask questions of conferees. So keep that in mind as we get started here today. And we are going to start with the Rural Economic Development and Housing. And our first conferee is Allie Devine from Kansas Farm Bureau and Kansas Corn Growers Association. Welcome to the committee, Allie.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Chairman and members of the committee. Today, I have the pleasure of representing Farm Bureau and the corn growers. Both of them are our clients. And we have a really unique and exciting time in agriculture, and it's not often we get to stand up and say we're exciting in agriculture. So here we are. There's many stories that are going to be told today, and I want to keep you focused on a couple themes. The first, we're going to be asking or giving you information about our request of $50 million for rural housing. That's one theme. The other themes you're going to hear about are some of the information regarding bills that are pending before the legislature that deal with rural economic development and housing. And then we're going to talk about just the growth of economic development in rural Kansas today and why housing has become the issue for all of us. So with us today, our coalition is made up of Kansas Farm Bureau, Kansas Corn Growers Association, Sunflower Electric Power Corporation, and the Northwest Kansas Economic Innovation Center. Almost 2 years ago, we commissioned our own study to figure out why is it that Kansas is not getting the kind of rural business development projects that other states have gotten. Now, we've had a long history of different studies in the state. Our study came back and confirmed many of the things that prior people had studied and found. But our study came back with 41 recommendations, and we can't do them all, so we started small. And those two things that we're looking at are business development issues and housing issues. And why does it matter, housing today? Well, about the same time we were moving forward to talk about housing, the statewide housing assessment, the first in 30 years, came out. And today with us is Ryan Vincent with the Housing Authority. So if you want information on that, he's here. We started to talk about what programs are working and where. And so we got through the first round of discussions, and we settled on that the entity that is doing the most in rural economic development housing is the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, of which Mr. Vincent oversees. We asked the question, what is it you do? How do you do it? And we asked people in the country, do we support them? Do we think they're doing a good job? To the person, they came back and said, KHRC has been great to work with. The only problem they have is they don't have enough money to do the things that need done. So we're directing our attention to those programs that they currently operate that we think are best for rural Kansas. It's not us alone. As we started to work, attached to my testimony is the signatures of 16 other organizations that support our efforts to put more money into rural housing. That was a kind of an organic thing that happened. We started to talk, we did presentations in other committees, and they joined with us in supporting the request. So how does this all fit together? The governor in her budget has a $20 million request for the moderate income housing program, which is operated by KHRC. That moderate income housing program is valuable and has been effective in rural communities. There are other programs that are within the KHRC that are equally, but probably not as well known, but helpful in rural communities. That's being down payment assistance for an individual, weatherization of a home for individuals, communities or cities can ask for and receive assistance through one of their other programs that helps build the infrastructure that's needed for either housing or business development. And then there's the moderate income housing program and the low income housing program. Those 5 programs have been very effective for rural communities. So today, we would tell you we support the governor's ask for $20 million for moderate income housing, but we're also saying it's not enough. We would like to see funding for those other gamut of programs that's available. As I said, we've been in other places. We've talked with the House Committee on Financial Institutions and Rural Development, and we talked to the House Ag and Natural Resources Budget Subcommittee. The Budget Subcommittee made a recommendation to the full House Appropriations Committee for the funding, and I assume that's my time. Thank you. We appreciate your help.
Thank you, Ally, and committee, we will hold questions till we hear from all conferees. Next, we have Claire Guston, Vice President, Member Services and External Affairs from Sunflower Electric Power Corporation. Thank you so much for being here, Claire. Welcome.
Thank you. So, what does a utility care about rural development? Well, we care a lot, not only because economic development provides load for our system, but also we know that a strong community is important for our company, for our members, so that we have the proper healthcare system and schools, et cetera. It all works together. About 5 years ago, our board commissioned a very specific board strategy that said we're really going to invest in economic development. One of the things that came from that is the study that Ally referenced, and attached to my testimony is a summary of the findings of that report. I am not going to go into those. If you have any questions about any part of that, I would love to chat with you about that. So I've been doing economic development, rural development for a long time, and housing has been a problem forever. What's different today than 10 years ago or 20 years ago when communities were saying we need more housing? Today, what's different is the inventory that we had even 18 months ago, 2 years ago in our rural communities is gone. Those houses have been rented. Those houses have been sold. We have had people move back because they could take their portable job out of a city. In far western Kansas, we have a lot of people that have moved from the Front Range to live in a place that's got wide open spaces. We have people who'd never been to western Kansas, but have taken jobs or moved into our communities. So this is different than the mantra you may have heard for years about we don't have good housing in rural Kansas. And I will say that as I talk to people in southeast Kansas or other parts of Kansas, this is not something that's unique to western Kansas. It's happened in rural communities everywhere. We do also have great job opportunities. You're going to hear about opportunities in southwest Kansas. You're going to hear about Norton County, but I want to identify some other counties and some of their opportunities. In Phillips County, and all these examples that I'm going to give you are from northwest Kansas, Phillips County, Summit Bioenergy, which is one of the largest ethanol producers in the country, purchased an ethanol plant in Phillipsburg. They're going to build a gluten plant, and they need to hire 55 people to work at that gluten plant once they make that $200 million investment in that new plant. Smith County, Applequist Manufacturing, needs 65 people to support their ag equipment manufacturing project. And in Sherman County, there's a startup tech company, Goodland Tech, that currently has 35 people employed, and they have about a $1.5 million annual payroll in Goodland, and they need to hire another 100 employees. And what's common with all those opportunities? Those are all communities who have seen their housing inventory used up. I can't say it's gone. it's gone off the market, someone is sleeping in those beds. And so we need to figure out, we want to bring in employees, we need to have a place for them to land. So I'll be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Next, we have Josh Rowe, Kansas Corn Growers Association. Welcome to the committee, Josh.
Good morning, Chairwoman Erickson and the rest of the committee. Josh Rowe, Kansas Corn Growers Association here. And one of my roles in this is to really quantify what the need is around rural housing. As I discussed earlier, the moderate income housing program under KHRC has had great success with an average per home contribution of $25,000, and they're able to leverage that many times over with other sources through there. And so kind of taking that information, the latest 2020 census information, and then something that was a really big help through this, the Kansas Housing, needs assessment survey that came out that gives an estimate for the number of homes or percent of homes within a given county that are rated as in poor or below condition. And so adding all of those numbers together and considering the counties that are at 60,000 in population or below, just to kind of give an idea what the need is, in those counties, there's actually 37,725 homes that are listed as poor or very poor condition. And so kind of that top and large number through there, that if we looked at an average contribution of $25,000 per home to replace all the poor housing stock would be over $943 million, which that's a very large number through there. So we stepped back a little bit and said, hey, what if you were to replace 1% of the housing inventory, 1% of that stock within these rural counties? And that comes down to 4,217 homes and $105 million in MIH expenditures needed through there. And something else I've done as part of my regular testimony that has the detail for each of the counties under those scenarios. And then for members of the committee that have counties that are in that 60,000 definition of rural, I provided some more detailed information that just lists those counties in your districts through there, and happy to talk through those numbers at any rate. But kind of the bottom line is, there is a need. This $50 million is a substantial ask in contribution, but there is a need for that funding many times over. So happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Josh. Next, we have Mike Parson, Executive Director, Norton City County Economic Development from Norton, Kansas. Welcome to the committee, Mike.
Well, thank you, Senator, and all of the committee. And just as a point of reference, I not only represent Norton County Economic Development, I'm also on the Economic Innovation Board that was a part of the Ag Research. But I was also the Northwest Kansas Technical Rep for the Statewide Housing Assessment as it unfolded. So I'm here specifically to give you a bit of a rural perspective on how this housing crisis is impacting a community like Norton. And when I say rural to Norton, you have to drive 90 miles to find a Walmart and a strip mall. So we're fairly rural. But I'm an engineer, I'm a numbers guy, so I'm going to talk very quickly about a few numbers. We did a housing study in Norton County. Ahead of the housing study, I had over 120 homes on the market for sale. At the same time, I had about 120 job vacancies in Norton. Those numbers could lead you to an air of complacency. We did the housing study. We unfolded a rehab program because we realized part of our challenge was we needed to update the value of our existing housing stock. But what has happened as a result of the pandemic, I know from conversations with our realtors and those that have moved in, we're now faced in December. I did a survey of all of our employers in December. At that time, I had 186 workforce vacancies in Norton County. That's a a county seat of 3,000, a county of under 6,000, 186 workforce vacancies. 70 of those are state jobs at a correctional facility and a ks.gov, a regional center. I can't fill one. Today I've only got 5 homes on the market. Those 186 jobs, when I stratify them, could be somewhere between $7.5 and $8 million worth of annual payroll to Norton County. But how can I fill them with only 5 homes on the market? So I want to talk a little bit about what is going on post-pandemic. First of all, we know that our housing stock, from 120 to 5, we know the bulk of our homes, like I said, through socializing this with our realtors, most of them have been sold to people moving in from the Front Range, the Colorado, Boulder, Denver sort of settings, either taking early retirement or moving in with portable work from home jobs. So they depleted our housing stock, but they didn't take jobs. So they compounded our problem. We're blessed to have them in our communities, but they did not solve my issue of how do I put people at work with no job. We've got recruiting incentives available from a local resource partner. Ironically, I can pay people to move in, but I don't have a place for them to stay. I've got 4 manufacturing companies in Norton that over the last year all successfully applied and were approved for Department of Commerce HPIP projects. These 4 employers and another employer with a Department of Commerce peak project, they're investing $6 million with plans to grow 38 net new jobs. That's a part of the 186. But again, they're concerned, they're expressing to me, and the testimony they provided to me for my base grant application, their biggest concern on fulfilling their growth objectives with Department of Commerce is where will they put people with no houses. So the bottom line for me is we've got opportunities for economic growth. We've got jobs, we've got ways to recruit people in, we don't have a place for them to live. I would like to encourage what the others have presented on supporting the additional funding for the KHRC programs, which they're informed, they're aware of our dynamics, our rural housing needs. So it's a great place to support these housing needs for Western Kansas. And as a part of the Regional Economic Innovation Center, I know Norton's not alone. I'm surrounded by counties that have similar problems with abundant jobs and lack of housing. So that is the bottom line. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mike. And next we have Joanne Knight, Executive Director, Dodge City, Ford County Development. Good to see you again, Joanne.
Thank you, Senators, for the time. I'd like to just send my support for this bill to get the passage on it. I will tell you that in Dodge City, we haven't sat on our hands not trying to address the housing problem. We have actually fully staffed an organization to work on housing specifically, and we are working with every area that we can, from doing a partnership with our community college Building Trades kids where they build a house for us every year. We have used a moderate income housing grant. We just received a community development block grant. But the most beneficial thing of all to us was implementing the Rural Housing Incentive District, which basically takes your local property tax that you're going to create because of these housing districts and applies to help pay for that public infrastructure. We've completed about 500 to 600 homes on that, and we've completed about 800 homes overall in the last 7 or 8 years, and we still have about 700 to 800 that are being considered in districts, but that's still not enough. And we have some great growth going on right now. We just broke ground on a 217,000 square foot FedEx facility, which will add 150 to 200 jobs. And then the largest announcement, which is the 3rd largest project going on in the state of Kansas right now, is the Hillmar cheese plant. Hillmar will be employing 260 jobs at the plant directly, but the biggest impact on that is that they'll have about 750 dairy employees throughout southwest Kansas. And those communities are really going to need some assistance with getting some of the housing. They're coming, whether they put in mobile homes or trailer or RVs, but if we could make an investment in those rural communities to really get that infrastructure and to build long-term housing, that's really what our hope is. So I have today brought with me a couple of representatives from Hillmar. I have Jason Price, the CFO of Hillmar, and Karen Tate, who is one of the ownership team and also a dairy producer. And so I'll bring them up here. If you guys have any questions about the project at all, we'd be happy to answer them, and I would stand for any housing questions as well.
Thank you very much. We will have questions here. We have one more conferee, and then we will get to questions and look forward to hearing more about Hillmar. Finally, we have Alex Orrell, Senior Vice President, Government Relations, Kansas Bankers Association. Welcome, Alex.
Good morning, committee. Good to see everybody this morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I am Alex Orrell, representing the Kansas Bankers Association. Pleasure to be before the Commerce Committee. I am appearing on behalf of the 99% of the 220 banks that operate in Kansas, representing the 22,000 employees that provide financial service in every county across our state. I do appreciate you having this very important hearing. Addressing a very significant issue in our state that has long-term effects, and that is the need for housing development. You're probably wondering why the Kansas Bankers Association is here and why our involvement is significant, why we've been working with this coalition. Last year, the Kansas Bankers Association, at the direction of our chairman of our board, Mike Avey from Coffeyville, Kansas, created a housing and community development task force. We knew the statewide study was coming, and we knew there was going to be a significant amount of bills and proposals before this legislature. And at the direction of his lead, we did create a task force to start looking at things that what we can do to be helpful partners. Because without housing and without people and without jobs, you do not have economic development. It is a major issue, and we need to be partners with our stakeholders in the room. We appreciate the coalitions and their work on bringing this attention. They've done a fantastic job. But the KBA, we recognize that there's a shortage of attainable housing for both low-income and moderate-income Kansans. Shortage of quality housing is an undeniable barrier to economic growth and development for any community, whether it be rural or urban, but specifically rural. Bankers are committed to seeing that everyone who dreams of home ownership has that opportunity, and at the direction of our members, we support policies that will encourage the improvement of existing houses, generate new construction, and incentivize financial investment in communities and customers we serve. I also had the pleasure of serving on the technical committee last year that helped provide feedback for the statewide housing study that was released in late December. Regarding the KHRC, they do have a long history of success in our state of providing great services. They do have a board that provides oversight, and they do have industry representation from our industry that provides feedback, and do believe they do a great job. The previous conferees have done a great job highlighting other things, so I'm not going to reiterate what they have said on MIH and those other programs. I am going to take this opportunity to talk about a couple other things before this legislature. We absolutely support the appropriation of $50 million. The KHRC could use that money, and they can be flexible with those dollars for a variety of programs. But there are some other proposals before this legislature, and those are outlined in Senate Bill 369, 375, 376, HB 2268, and Senate Sub HB 2212. That is outlined in my testimony. I'm going to highlight two of those because they actually do highlight the goals and strategies from the statewide housing study. And if you have not looked at the goals and strategies piece of the statewide housing study, I would encourage you to look at it. The statewide study is a very big document. I think it's like 270 pages. So this is kind of a quicker view to look at it. But HB 2212 actually combines 369 and 375, and it creates the Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credit and the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Act. Both programs set aside a certain amount of tax credits that would be annually available, that would be administered by a KHRC for rural development, focusing on both moderate income and low income development for renovation. I'm going to read you one of the goals and strategies, and this is actually the first one that's listed in the study for adding or freeing up more middle income housing. Capital or incentives for these projects is often harder to find, and returns on investments are seen as lower. To address this, a mix of incentives should both improve existing units and generate new constructions. That's straight from the study. I do believe that bill does address that goal. There is another piece of legislation that is over in the House, that is HB 2268. Representative Troy Waymaster has been leading the way on that bill, and we've been supporting that, which would create a rural home loan guarantee. We do understand that building homes is a significant chore and problem because the build of construction is significantly harder in the rural areas than the urban areas. That bill would create a guarantee fund that would help to cover the difference of the cost to build and the appraisal of that cost, or appraisal of that build. We did start that bill out at $2 million for that fund, but that could be the difference of that house being built in that rural community or not. And that is focusing specifically on counties in less than 10,000. So very strong rural piece of that. I don't bring these proposals up to compete with the efforts today. The reason why I bring this up is to highlight the significant need for multiple approaches of solving the housing problem here in Kansas. Unfortunately, and ultimately, there is no one solution to fix this problem. It is a multi-pronged approach that needs to be done to help fix this. The more tools in the toolbox to help our communities grow by making housing more affordable will attract new residents or keep residents. We've seen that in our state, specifically in my generation. New businesses, new jobs in all parts of our state for the long-term sustainability of rural Kansas and our state. And that is something I think we can all get behind. I appreciate this committee's time and effort in listening to my testimony, and I'll be willing to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex. And with that, that concludes our oral conferees today. Committee, I will draw your attention to written testimony from Stacy Davis, Jenny Russell, James Wright, and those are included in your packet. So with that, committee, I will open it up for questions. Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I imagine Ally would be the best to answer this. Thank you. It's come to my attention that we can cut cost almost 2/3 of a moderate income house by using hempcrete and 3D housing. Would impact farming because hemp takes much less water. Plus what's going on in Europe right now and how unstable we are, and we have to become less dependent on foreign markets. What's the view of like Farm Bureau with hemp and hempcrete? I understand.
I'm sorry. We've looked at different methods of forming walls, forming things, and there's probably smarter people than me on this topic. But I will say generally Farm Bureau will support value added, and I'll go back and check specifically on hemp. I do know from other sources that the concept of a 3D printer use for building is real, and there are people in the state that are already developing those innovative type housing development pieces. So I defer to others who will happily raise their hands. Thank you.
I see none. It's amazing what technology can do, so it doesn't surprise me that there's an application for 3D printing in construction these days. Okay, committee, I'll give you a little more time to percolate. I do have a couple of questions, and Joanne, if you would bring up Jason, and I'm sorry I didn't. Okay. Welcome so much. I do have a couple of questions for you because as a Commerce Committee, we're always looking for economic development. So I would like to ask you, why did you choose Kansas? I'm a little bit biased. I mean, I know why, I love Kansas, but for you, why did you choose Kansas for your location?
Thanks for having us here today. We chose Kansas because we're agricultural families. Our company was founded by Jersey dairymen who were looking for a better price for their milk. And we love our cows. My sister and I actually run our dairy farm at home, and it's been passed down for about 100 years. So, in California, we're limited on what we can do there and the opportunities for agriculture in the state. And so it's fabulous to come to a location with welcoming people who still enjoy animal agriculture and can allow us to grow our business because there is a need for cheese and dairy products. So we're excited with that opportunity.
Great. Do you have anything?
Nothing
to add?
I guess
Okay.
the only other thing I might just emphasize is just how welcoming both from the city all the way up through the state, everybody has been. And so we definitely look at that as we look at across the country for different locations. And being further east for us is helpful in terms of getting to our end customers. So those are a couple of additional factors.
Well, we're thrilled, whatever reason. We're happy to have you. My next question is, what's the amount of investment you are making in Kansas?
Yes, I can take that one. So direct investment from the company would be over $600 million into the facility itself. And then on top of that, the dairies that would come in to support the plant would be another roughly $550 million of investment that they would make as well. So it's well over $1 billion in total.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And any samples you can provide would be greatly appreciated. I mean, not that, I'm just saying. I'm sure it would not go to waste if you were to provide that. So, well, thank you so much for that. And it's a pleasure to have you here in Commerce and look forward to seeing the progress and want to welcome you to Kansas. So.
Thank you very much for your time.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess my question would be for Mr. Rowe to start with, and since it appears that we've got a little bit of time, Madam Chair, I've got a few questions that I will be asking of different conferees. It looks like the information that you provided us talks about house construction cost at $150,000. Now, I'm trying to calculate in my head, which can be a good thing or can be dangerous, but at $100 a square foot, this is a 1,500 square foot home. Is that what this is based off of?
It went to a 100, so whatever the math is for $150 per square foot was what the average was there. And that was just the construction cost is more for a guide, probably focusing more on that MIH contribution for these pieces. But like 1,200 square foot home at $150 a square foot. So,
Okay.
yeah.
1,200 square foot home is not a very large home, but are those large enough to meet the needs of most families? 1,200 square foot might be 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Yeah, and that is something I could yield to others on this, but was just kind of trying to get to a starting point or an average from that. So obviously some could be smaller, some larger, and then some of these could also be, there's flexibility within this, that there could be, multifamily, kind of like apartment duplexes, so where you would get some economies of scale out of that as well.
I noticed one of the supporters, I believe it was in Ms. Devine's testimony, was the manufactured housing industry. I don't know, and you may or may not know, but are manufacturing houses a little less costly to build? Because I know manufacturing homes can cost $150,000, but those generally, the ones that I have seen, seem to be fairly the nicer ones.
Yeah, not here, and I hate to comment on that, but yeah, I've seen different levels of those as well. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all that I have for
Thank you.
I do, Madam Chair, have a question of the lady from Sunflower. Ms.
Claire?
Guston.
Yeah.
You list several different, on your testimony, some counties and several businesses that are investing and bringing jobs, which is great. I wish you were talking more southeast Kansas rather than southwest, but in any event, I'm old enough that I've heard some stories, but not old enough that I remember this ever happening, so I'm going to talk a little bit above my understanding or knowledge here, but I have been told in the past, meaning like way back 50 years ago, I'm kidding when I say way back, but maybe longer than that, 7,500 years ago, that some big businesses would actually build homes or houses for employees that then they would sell to employees, or they could even finance them. And I don't know if that's legal or not, but I guess what I'm thinking is, just picking the very top one, the Summit Bioenergy, they're investing $200 million in their own facility. at $150,000 per home. If they built 10 homes, that's $1.5 million. And if they built 20, you're talking $3 million, which would really help with housing. And those homes will stay there no matter what the business decided to do down the road. I guess my question would be, is that something that you are aware of that has happened or a company's ever look at doing to help with housing stock?
So I'm going to, I'll take those questions. Number one, to your first question about the history of having companies invest in housing, yes, that is something where companies provided housing for workers. Today, many ag producers in our part of the state provide housing for their employees. That is still happening today. And I do think that there is an interest with some of those owners to make sure that they, that the housing is available as it is developed. I can't tell you today that, you know, this company is going to invest in housing. My first reaction to that is if they're going to be making an investment in their facility, if there are things we can do from the community development side to make that housing available, I'd rather them do their expansion to the extent they need their expansion and use their resources for that first before we think about housing. But that is certainly on the table. And again, there are companies in Northwest Kansas that already provide employee housing. So I don't think that's off the table at all.
When you say provide employment housing, is that existing homes or construction of new homes?
In the one case I'm thinking of, they've done both. So.
Okay, I just thought that I would mention that as a possibility from a historical standpoint, something that I believe has been done and something that could be beneficial not only to the community, but also to the entity or the business coming in. And that's all I have for now. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you very much. This might be a Josh question to begin with. So the printout that you gave us, yes. So it's not numbered, but it looks to me like there's more than 90 counties in that under 60,000 population.
Yeah, there'd be 96 counties.
96.
Yeah.
So with 50 million, and I think I asked this question when the Kansas Resource Housing folks were here earlier, the 50 million, let's just say you've got 50 million, how do you disperse that and how do you prioritize? And my senator colleague mentioned, you know, or someone did multiple housing units as well as single family housing units, and with 96 counties and $50 million, how do you do that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, through that, I yield to Ryan because I don't want to speak to their application and assessment project, if that's okay, if I may.
Yes, please.
Ryan, if you would just please introduce yourself for the record.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ryan Vinson. I'm Executive Director at Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, or KHRC. Spoke with the committee, I think, 2 weeks ago now. These all kind of blur together, but certainly appreciate so many wonderful partners and interests from across the state coming together to address what has been a long-term problem in our state. To go to the senator's question, my pause is that we don't know what constraints or direction will ultimately come from this body on as far as if we receive funding, how it should be utilized. As mentioned from many of the conferees, we have a number of programs that have proven successful and flexible and responsive and to be wonderful partners for everybody from employers to community leaders to nonprofits to housing developers. We have experience, we have housing partners, we have a team within our office that is ready to go. What we need is the money and the direction. We've got ideas, and we're using the state housing study as the template. So one of the big key findings, as you heard about, is to free up or create additional moderate income housing units in the state. We already have a successful program that you keep hearing about. Rather than recreate the wheel, we would suggest expanding that program. but also expanding the eligibility for it, expanding the size of the grants that we can provide, or even making loans so that eventually we can start making some kind of revolving fund that can help serve long-term interests as well. We've talked about one of the key findings of the housing study is preservation. We've got a wonderful, successful housing tax credit program that already serves low-income housing interests and persons in the state. That currently serves half of the development that goes through that program every year is in rural communities already. So again, rather than recreate the wheel, what we'd recommend doing is giving us the funding to be able to supplement that program so that we can create more units in more places with existing partners. So again, rather than recreate the wheel, we've got a mechanism, we've got a channel, we just need the funds and the direction. One of the things that I continue to caution is that we all want to serve extreme rural communities, but the more restrictions that we ultimately put on how the funds are used, the less that we were able to enjoy the flexibility and the responsiveness and all the things that have made these programs and KHRC generally popular with our stakeholders. Yes, we want to serve communities under 10,000 population, but if you suddenly say that we can only use the funds in those communities, that will dramatically limit our process because we have a developer-driven network. We don't know exactly what applications will come to us, but we've got great partners and we're trying to build capacity. And if we can get a source of sustained long-term funding, we're going to build that capacity long-term. Because currently, we're competing, our state is, with developers and contractors and builders who are working in Oklahoma City and Denver and Omaha and all around us. If we make a long-term commitment as a state to give us flexible tools, not just one, but as Alex mentioned, several, then we're going to be able to help fill the gap. We're going to be able to incentivize that housing depending on what the needs are of the local area. And those needs are different in Norton than they are in Dodge City or in Iola or, you pick the place. I think that's what we bring to the table, that flexibility, that knowledge, and the partners, because it's not just KHRC that has dollars. We are aware of a couple of employers that have put in dollars. The McCarty Dairy in Rexford is a good example, where we're able to work with USDA Rural Development. We're able to work with an employer. Sometimes we're able to work with a community foundation. Sometimes we're able to work with a local school. We can put the right partners in the right place so that we stand ready to make the development happen, but we need the flexibility and ultimately the resource to do that. So winded answer to your question, Senator, but we are prepared, whether it's through a request for proposal process, whether it's specifically just expanding the existing programs, to ultimately get whatever dollars you provide out the door to those that we serve.
Okay, I do have a couple of quick questions, and this is to whomever would like to answer them. So as someone who very much believes in the free market and letting supply and demand and drive business development, what would you say to those who say, what business is it of the government to subsidize or provide housing? Why shouldn't we let the free market, the demand and supply, work its magic?
A wonderful question, Chairwoman, and I can certainly take the initial stab since I'm on the hot seat, but I'd welcome some of the, do you want to take it? Please do.
Thank you, Hallie.
Thank you for the question, and I'm not the technician, but I'll give you the policy answer. Unlike urban areas, to get a developer to come to rural Kansas or rural areas, one, it's more costly. Two, they don't have the volumetric response because they're not going to build 25 spec homes because they have to have the need and the location. Given our current marketplace, if we get over this hump of the real need, we think that we're going to see a shift where we're going to have more interest by developers to come to rural communities. We're not there yet. Today, a couple of the people that could not come were developers. They had other commitments. We have their testimony where they talk about the combination of programs that are available. This is why we need the assistance of government, either through tax credits or through the MIH program or low income. Those programs are designed to keep the cost down to where you can have an affordable house. Hypothetical. You buy a lot in rural Kansas, let's say it's, I'm going to say 5,000 to 6,000. You turn around, or you buy acres, and you turn around and you start to put the infrastructure in. If you were in Topeka, you would pay special taxes on that parcel, that new home that was built. In a rural community, that cost is still high, but the appraised value of those homes are not going to be there because we haven't had the history of comparables that allows the financing to follow. So if we have the government subsidy, basically, or assistance through these programs, it keeps that value of the home low enough to where the average incomes can afford to buy the house. It is a short-term solution. We have a series of tools available, and we didn't even go through them all today, but those tools with government assistance are what makes it happen. That may not have been the most clear answer, but that's my understanding of it.
I appreciate that because I know that that will be a question that's asked frequently. I guess my next one is just from a personal perspective. You know, we've had some contractor work done recently, and they all are backlogged, and we are still waiting on some supplies, like we have no cabinet doors, we don't have our shower. I mean, so with the supply chain and the backlog for contractors in general, is there an estimated time frame? Because I know that, as we've heard from Hillmar, they're coming. I mean, how quickly do we think, even if the funds are available, realistically, contractors could get up and going and provide some housing that is much needed?
Madam Chair, Allie Devine again, and this is largely through conversations with developers. What they have told me is that we are seeing some relaxation, that the supply chains are starting to work again. Granted, we don't know whether the course of world events are going to change that again. But when, in two developers in particular, there was one, Mr. McLaughlin from Salina and Mr. Ross Vogel from Kansas City, who have been doing rural work. They both told me that as we get the pieces put together, they will begin the process. The question is, do we have sites ready? Do we have infrastructure ready? Where we're going to put it? The real issue is they are in anticipation mode. If they anticipate that this is going to work and there's going to be additional funding through KHRC, they'll start putting the projects together. Is it going to turn in a year? We're going to have something happen in a year. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of conversations. But is it going to happen overnight? No. But they're in the queue. I'm optimistic that they're ready.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you all for coming and helping us understand this critical need more. It was a pleasure to meet our new partners from Hillmar. Welcome. And with that, committee, I will say we do have a hearing on broadband tomorrow, so I think that will be very interesting. Bring your questions. And with that, we are adjourned.